L'Assemblée générale.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Serene Highness Alois von und zu Liechtenstein, Head of State of the Principality of Liechtenstein. I request protocol to escort His Serene Highness.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Serene Highness Alois von und zu Liechtenstein, Head of State of the Principality of Liechtenstein, and I invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, it is an honor to speak before this Assembly today. In the year when Liechtenstein celebrates its 300th anniversary, we are proud and blessed to look back at 3 centuries of absence of armed conflict, good relations with our neighbors, and a trajectory from poverty to economic prosperity and political stability. And we are grateful for the numerous partnerships that have made this journey possible. An active foreign policy and diplomacy has been crucial for our survival as one of the smallest states of Europe. Without our international connections, we would not have been recognized as a sovereign state. Nor could we have consolidated our position at the Vienna Congress or survived as a sovereign state during the difficult times of 2 world wars. Working together with others on the basis of common rules is not just something that we conceptually subscribe to, it is an indispensable part of our history as a country and of our success as a society. Joining the United Nations in 1990 was therefore an organic continuation of what has consistently been our approach to foreign policy. Almost 30 years ago now, securing our sovereign equality was a key driver in becoming a member of this Assembly. But we have never looked at this important step as an end in itself. Rather, it has given us the means to help develop a rules-based international order and the rule of law as an expression of that sovereign equality. Today, more than ever, we are committed to these goals and to the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. Mr. President, 60 years ago still, Liechtenstein was a poor agrarian immigration country with a weak economy and very limited employment opportunities. Our path to one of the most industrialized countries with a highly diversified and innovative economy was made possible through the opening of global markets based on common rules. Today, we are witnessing difficult trends, a more unstable global order, an increase in protectionism, a weakening of international cooperation, and the erosion of internationally agreed standards and the rule of law. We will continue our engagement for the respect of international law, the bedrock of the United Nations. And we worked with those that are committed to multilateralism. As a small state, we will always stand with the rule of law and against the rule of might. And we will continue applying the important lessons from our history: consistent foreign policy, pay important dividends domestically. Indeed, the United Nations is the key forum to promote these goals. This is not a time of easy successes and quick wins for the United Nations, but it is still a time of opportunity. The trust of the international public in the United Nations continues to be very high, surprisingly high, one is tempted to say. More than ever, people around the world understand that the big threats that we are facing, including the survival of our planet, require all of us to work together. This is the political capital we are given and that we have to use in the conversation with those governments who tend to look for solutions elsewhere or are simply denying the challenges. Mr. President, the 2030 Agenda remains a central blueprint for our common future. With the enormous challenge of climate change at its core, the Sustainable Development Goals have galvanized important initiatives in Liechtenstein. I am particularly encouraged by the positive response of the private sector. For years, we have been talking about the need to involve a broader range of stakeholders than just governments. Today, the need to involve private sectors, but also local communities, cities, and other stakeholders is overwhelming. Liechtenstein has already developed a number of sustainability initiatives, which can be potentially of interest to our international partners. If we can continue being innovative and creative in this area, we can generate an interest in our sustainability initiatives that matches the one for the products and services of our industrial and financial sectors. In fact, one of our central sustainability initiatives is a public-private partnership in which our financial sector has a key role. The Liechtenstein initiative to create the Financial Sector Commission on modern slavery and human trafficking. The blueprint produced by the Financial Sector Commission, to be launched this coming Friday, offers a toolkit for financial institutions to help fight slavery, one of the big organized crime models of our time. Mr. President, I am pleased to be able to witness the discussions at the high-level political forum during my visit in New York. We should all welcome the strong engagements of young people on questions of sustainability. Their voice calls for intergenerational justice, as a fundamental principle of our policy making. We should take this voice seriously. For the first time, Liechtenstein has appointed a youth delegate. She was part of the delegation that presented our first report on the implementation of the 2030 agenda here in July. It is certainly our responsibility to take the right policy decisions. But in so doing, we also have the responsibility to be aware of the consequences for those who will have to live with the effects, also in the years beyond 2030. Mr. President, we are committed to strengthening international law. This entails both securing respect for the norms that we have agreed, but also developing new norms where necessary. The rule of law at the international level and international justice are crucially important to us. We joined the International Court of Justice many years before we became member of the United Nations. And we have accepted its compulsory jurisdiction. More recently, we have been strongly committed to further international criminal justice. And we have had considerable success in this respect. The International Criminal Court remains the center of the international fight against impunity. At a time when agreed international rules, such as the Geneva Conventions, are routinely ignored, it has been even more important. The performance of the court has not always matched our expectations. And of course, the court is particularly exposed to headwinds caused by isolationist and nationalist trends. But this must be an incentive for us to increase our political investment in helping the court improve its performance. We can make it less vulnerable against political attacks. We have also led the effort to bring accountability for the crimes committed in the conflict in Syria. The creation of the international, impartial, and independent mechanism was a big success for this assembly to help shape the future of Syria. The political discussions on a post-conflict Syria have to include the dimension of accountability for the atrocities committed during the conflict. These discussions will not be easy, but they will be necessary to create a sustainable peace for the Syrian people. Mr. President, this organization was created to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. It was indeed the disaster of World War II that led to the creation of this organization. There have been other essential peace projects. For us, of course, the European Union has been central in this respect and has secured the period of peace that our region has never witnessed before. But as the global peace project, the United Nations remains unique. Its success in preventing conflict has been mixed, due in particular to the divisions among the permanent members of its Security Council, and recently an excessive use of the veto power. But today, more so than in a long time, armed conflict of unforeseeable consequences is a real danger. The existence of nuclear weapons and the options presented through cyber warfare, and the potential devastating impact of armed conflict are an incredible risk. All of us in this room have subscribed to the very strict rules embodied on the use of force in the UN Charter. Armed conflict is illegal, except when the use of force is authorized by the Security Council or if carried out in self-defense. The most serious forms of illegal use of force are also a criminal offense now, both in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court and in many domestic legal systems. These are new legal norms that we need more than ever and that also apply new methods of warfare. Mr. President, in conclusion, I wish to address a concern that my father, Prince Hans Adam, presented to this Assembly as the very first of our initiatives presented at the United Nations. As a small state, we have consistently stood up for the right of self-determination. It is one of the fundamental principles of international law and as such enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations and has been also incorporated in the Liechtenstein Constitution. Many of the conflicts of today have self-determination claims at their root. If not addressed in an effective and timely manner, the resulting controversies can lead to violence and, in extreme cases, to armed conflict. We continue to believe that we need models of innovative application of the right of self-determination in cases where independence is not a political option. Our work on this has extended over several decades now, and we will continue working to make this part of our contribution to achieving the goals reflected in the Sustainable Development Agenda. I thank you.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale,
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the Head of State of the Principality of Liechtenstein for the statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the Head of State.